Hi guys. So today, if you're a big Nick Saban fan or a football fan or a SEC fan, it's gonna hurt. But we're gonna break this down and we're gonna take a look at some of the fallacies that are being made as to incentives, and we're gonna examine all the parties that are involved in this little event of protecting college sports. Is it protecting it? And who is it protecting it from? And let's take a look.
Cuban coffee because I didn't sleep much last night worrying about this testimony. Ranking Member Cantwell and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. And I really want everybody here to know that I'm not here to represent a conference or a team, but to preserve college athletics as a whole.
He wants to preserve college athletics as a whole. Let's take a look at what that means, because one person in Congress, especially regulatory, setting up regulations, who does it really protect? Every time you involve the government, what does it really do? It creates a box around things of what you can and cannot do. So let's examine his position and some of the supporting arguments that he makes.
You know, I think we all have to ask ourselves a question: what is our guiding principles for the future of college athletics, including Olympic, women, and non-revenue sports?
So I'm surprised he did not include children or disabled individuals or the Special Olympics, because usually every argument that is meant to support something will always include, that's something you can watch out for, disability, color or race, gender. Um, those are the things they're trying to distract you with all the time. So he started with it, which is common.
You know, I've spent my adult life in college athletics. I believe in it. I've seen young people come in the program, need structure, need discipline, need coaching, need academic support, need accountability, and I've seen them leave with a degree, a career, a family, and a better chance to be successful in life. I think the current system that we have in college athletics right now makes it more and more difficult to do these things. We've moved away from development to focusing on money and not life skills.
Those are all things that the common man wants to hear. Family, discipline, getting a college degree, those are all important to the common men, myself included. But every time you start arguing about putting in regulatory compliance for something, like in this case, they're not going to tell you the exact reason of why this is happening. They'll support it with the things that will drive you towards agreement.
So to put this in perspective, if you had the biggest, baddest Ferrari that you could ever have and it was going 150 miles an hour toward the Grand Canyon, somebody needs to tap the brakes.
Isn't it funny he used a Ferrari? Can the average man afford a Ferrari? Not really. And is the protecting college sports actually about protecting something that's about to fall off a cliff, as he's creating a trajectory for? Is protecting, or not including protecting college sports, going to eliminate college sports? Eliminate it for who and in what way? Those are the questions we're going to ask.
And I think that's what we all need to do here. And I'm going to veer a little away from my testimony and just give you some examples of, things that I think people may not know that are happening in college football that are huge problems. First of all, I think student athletes should profit from name, image, and likeness.
The only reason he thinks that they should is because in 2025 they passed the NCAA has to share revenues with NIL players, but that came after players sued, after there was a lot of pushback about all this money that everybody else was making, except the actual players themselves. When everything went to digital gaming, which the licensing structures and so on, if you think about how much the players actually make in revenue, I would be curious to know. Because every time revenue comes into a business, they always take right off the top losses. They take right off the top their expenses. And remember, things and expenses can be added, which reduce the profit. Then now I have to give every single player. So those are questions that should be asked. They weren't happy about having to share revenue. You'd like to keep the whole pie too, right?
as long as those things are authentic endorsements. They create branding for themselves. They sign with the company. They do promotions. I think these things are all healthy for their education as well as their.
All that money making from NIL, name, image, and likeness, has nothing to do with education. It has to do with your ability to sustain yourself and your ability to support your family and create a legacy based on the capabilities you offer, which is your ability to be a great football player and have the skills necessary. They need to be paid for it. Remember, a long time, college kids that played football, they received maybe a free college degree, but what they were producing for the school, ROI, return on investment, was much higher. So the kids themselves weren't making money. Yes, they were getting a free college education, sum it up to how much it is. But in that 4 years, they put their body through the possible, how do you say this, physical pains that they will go through, or physical damage they will go through, right? So now when they have to pay their revenues and they have to share their revenues, they aren't happy about that because they have to split the pie. Now what's happening with NIL is kids are saying, we need more of that pie. And we need more of that pie because we're the reason that college football is what it is. You have to think about that, right? And we'll go through each of these examples. But one thing for sure is making money with NIL does not add to your education. It adds to your pockets.
Quality of life. I think name, image, and likeness has become pay for play. You know, I said 5 or 6 years ago.
Why wouldn't it be? If somebody's using your name, image, and likeness, why wouldn't you pay them for it? Pay for play. Isn't that what everybody else does?
When a school that I'm not going to mention, who didn't do anything wrong, had what is called a collective. A collective is an organization.
So what he's about to talk about is the slush fund. You have to remember that when you are a university or a college, you have a pool of players you pick from. And that pool of players you pick from is whether you can get them to come to your college, obviously has to do with how big the college is, how likely it is from you playing for that college, and how likely it is for you to go into the NFL by playing through that college as a path to that lifestyle. So the universities realize that we all have now it's uneven playground because the universities with the most money can now bring those players in, or with the biggest name or reputation can bring in those better players. So what the universities that were not playing on equal footing, meaning they didn't have the money, they didn't have the big names, some of the smaller schools, what they would started doing, which is very, very genius and resourceful, they said, okay, we don't have alumni with a lot of money. We don't have the power names behind our school names. We're going to start a slush fund and we're going to start collecting money. So now we can have a slush fund, a bucket of money that we can use to attract talent that we wouldn't otherwise have access to. I don't see anything wrong with that. That's called resourcefulness. So that means they leveled the playing field of power asymmetry. I don't have the money. I don't have the name that comes with the power that comes with the name, like a big school, like LSU, Texas, things of that nature. So now I have more money, I can compete. Well, guess what? The bigger schools didn't like it very much because now these guys found a different way to level the playing ground. Let's continue.
That raises money basically from alumni to be able to pay players and disguise it as marketing opportunities. When a school did that, the first school that did it, I said, is this what we want college football to become? And I got really criticized for that. But it has become that. And it's become pay for play. And we've also extended the opportunities now to funnel money from operations, which come to the universities as marketing opportunities from the university.
Let me explain that part right here because it's pretty insidious. So what he's saying is that now coaches and universities, colleges had to take their marketing budget. Remember, just like a household budget, you have a budget for your facials and you have a budget for clothes and you have a budget for groceries and a budget for electrical. So now you're saying, but I really want to buy that Hermes purse. I really want to buy the Louis Vuitton purse. Now I have to take money from my groceries or my electricity in order to cover my expenses on the more expensive purse or the more expensive player. Are you complaining because the other guy had a better resource plan with the slush fund? And so you're upset and now you have to move your cash that used to work before? That's called capitalism. And that's called evolution.
University standpoint, to funnel that money out of operations into paying players. So now if you take that $20 million or whatever it is, you could fund 5 or 6 Olympic and women's sports. So these are things that I think need to be addressed, and I think this bill takes a big step forward in doing that. So
that bill is full of several things, including media rights. And it also includes the ability to box in players in multiple different ways. And what I want you to think about when he's talking about preventing a free market or free agent perspective for these young college kids is they don't like the way the economics are not changing. Universities licensing agreements with EA Sports, for example, or any of the other digital NIL type organizations, players always received the short end of the stick. Right now, things are changing because those with the short end of the stick have become very resourceful. Now, the big boys, the old guard, doesn't like it very much. I understand why they feel the way they do.
I think this bill also creates a competitive balance. You know, the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, they all have some kind of rules that govern how they compete. It creates parity. It creates, something that gives you the opportunity to have a framework to build a fair play system in, which I think is.
Be careful of the word fair play. Fair for who? Who stands to make the most money and gain the most power when something is being put into place? Please remember who's speaking. And by the way, I love Nick Saban. I love Nick Saban. And I'm saying that, but this particular opinion that he's sharing with Congress is concerning, right? Because to me, we're not thinking about second and third order effects. So let's take who he is. He's a coach. You have to remember that a coach is judged upon their ability to win games. The way he wins games, break it down some more. The way he wins games is by having the best players. And the way you have the best players is by having the most money. So, of course, he has skin in the game. All you have to do is analyze it.
Really, really important, and I think this bill does that. Right now in college football, we have no rules. We have state laws. We have different in every state. We have litigation. The NCAA cannot enforce their own rules because every time they try to enforce the rule, there's a lawsuit. So, I mean, an example would be.
By the way, if you look at the lawsuits, I think it's important for people to take a look at the lawsuits that survived litigation and those that didn't. Every time there's a lawsuit, the law always looks to see if it has legs, if it stands, if it has merit to even be argued in court. So the idea of having lawsuits coming in should make somebody wonder, well, there's an unequalness that's happening there. That's why a person that doesn't have the power or the money of an organization uses the legal system to equal the playing ground. So if these lawsuits are happening, it would be curious to see how far they go. Do they actually win? Because if they are, then that means that something does need to change. There's power asymmetry there.
Ole Miss's quarterback, they say he can't play next year. He's playing next year because of litigation. So, but this is just the way it is. It's become an arm race. Who spends the most has got the best chance to win.
And guess what? Capitalism and market is like that. You are not going to go to a BMW or Mercedes car lot if you can't afford it. You don't even bother. So it's upsetting. It's like a layman person going to a Mercedes car lot and saying, lower your prices. Or if you remember in South Park, Randy used to get his drugs, his weed from his dealer. And then he realized he can grow his own. And once he did, he didn't want anybody else coming into the game, right? What did he do? He wanted to create laws preventing new ones from starting. Why? Because every time you gain the power and the money that comes along with that, you want to create regulations to stop it so you keep your power and your money. You don't want competition. So these players going into the portal and making more money or transferring, that creates chaos in the field because power says, I want to hold on to power. I want to hold on to money, to the income streams. And because players are saying, no, we want a little bit more of that pie, I understand why they're not happy.
But I think it's a race to the bottom because if you don't spend to win, you lose your fan base and you don't have any revenue. So how do you manage the other sports?
You just pay players what they're worth. I'm going to explain what that means. I know some people are probably screaming at the screen saying, well, it's going to be a lot of money. No, economies of supply and demand takes care of itself, and we'll talk about that.
So the one thing that I think this bill does, sort of enhance the enforcement of the House settlement, which to me is a start, which sort of creates a revenue share, kind of a cap, and also controls some of the name, image, and likeness things that this bill tries to control. So transferring, I think transferring is a good thing. I don't think a player should be trapped in a bad situation. But I also think multiple transfers have a negative effect. I think there can be legitimate circumstances where you can transfer more than once. I think if you graduate, you should be able to transfer again because you might have a fifth year where
Again, this is regulations to create a box around a human being. Create a box around a human being telling them the cap at which how much money they can actually gain from the free market for their capabilities and skills, and to cap how they can move. Imagine getting a job someplace and then your employer tells you you're not allowed to move to another employer. I'm going to cap your transfer. That's literally the same thing. What is the current economic structure regarding college sports has always been power asymmetry. And now that the players, because of NIL, have a little bit of leverage and they're trying to extract the value from that leverage, what is doesn't like that very much. So there's going to be friction and there's going to be changes because they're saying we want more of what you've given us. And what is says, no, I want to keep what I've had because it's comfortable.
you can have more success someplace else. But unlimited transfers creates free agency. Free agency with a collective, now you're talking about bidding war for players.
That's called free market. That's called I need to be able to improve myself and my economic way to be able to afford a Hermes, to be able to afford a BMW. If I can't do that, I don't go to BMW complaining and calling it a crisis because BMW is higher than my budget allowance or how much I can afford. Everything is a fight of classism. Classism, where you fall within the power trek or ladder, rather, if you will, of what you can afford. What is and what has been extracting value out of players without due pay is now unhappy because players are saying we want more. We want what we deserve.
And then you've got agents out there that are not certified.
Look at that too. You have these free agents that come in and they want to represent these young kids to have them have more money. So now the organizations, which Nick Saban is the mouthpiece for right now in this interview, is saying, we don't like that. Why not? Why not? As a coach, don't you negotiate the best price you have? Do you have a cap for that also? I'd be curious to see. And if you look at it, any person that, like an actor or a player, even in the NFL, they all have managers. Their manager's job is to get them the most value for their skill sets. So it's good for me, but not for thee, is the vibe that I'm getting.
That are enhancing players or encouraging players to get in the portal, I can get you more money. So now we have this unbelievable number of players that get in a portal every year, and we have nothing to control agents. We have nothing to control tampering. Clemson had a player that was on campus for a whole week, and they come and got him off the campus and took him someplace else. So
That's called options. You have options. As a free human being, you have options. options for value, option for partners, option for where you want to live. And every time you try to regulate that, you should always pause and ask why and who stands to profit from either monetary compensation or power.
These kinds of things going on in college football are absolutely not what any of us signed up for relative to the educational institutions that, we've all tried to represent. So
He said something very profound here. He said, we signed up to represent the institutions. He is a mouthpiece for the institution because the institutions are about to lose a money stream. Think about universities. How do they make their money? Knowledge. What has AI done now? It's dismantled knowledge gatekeeping because now everybody has access to knowledge. Degrees. Right now, nobody can afford to go to college, right? Everybody are hustling more than one job trying to make it because everything keeps going up. So now college degrees are going away. So all you have left is this college football thing, which is kind of, yeah.
what's the cause and effect of transferring? I think every time you transfer, you have less and less of an opportunity to graduate. This hits home with me because I actually coached 50 years ago when people didn't graduate, and we saw 30 for 30s on what happened to their life. And we worked hard for a long time to get graduation rates where they are. And
So graduation rates are directly tied to federal funding when it comes to a university. So if kids don't graduate, if he's using that as an example, I really care about them graduating and getting a degree. Ask yourself, do universities get funding based on the graduation level? Because graduation level dictates whether they are doing their job or not, right? So if less kids are graduating because they're transferring or they're moving from place to place, now what? It's another hit. So it's more than paying more. Now universities, we just talked about what AI is doing to universities and knowledge gatekeeping and what it's doing to football with the college sports and how they're trying to protect it. Now we're talking about graduation. So you see the university structure, organizational structure is being hit from multiple places. And remember, evolution always looks at what has waxed and waned, what needs to go away, what can no longer evolve as we move forward. Is college the best way to go to gain knowledge, to gain wisdom, now that it's available to everyone? That's why the AI copyrights has been ongoing also. So value and power are very important when we're considering some of these questions.
I'm proud of the fact that we had 668 or whatever the number is, graduates at Alabama over 17 years. So we need to get back to, that kind of atmosphere in college athletics. But if you transfer all the time, so first of all, we had players transfer that were in business. So they transferred, they couldn't get in business school at the school they transferred to, so they got in general studies so they could be eligible. So they minimized the importance of their degree because they transferred. And then also, could they graduate? You got guys transferring 3 or 4 years. We have guys playing 7 or 8 years of college football, which is ridiculous. We had 50.
By the way, during the COVID season, they actually extended it to 5 years. Some of his players played up to 6 years sometimes because of redshirting and the COVID pandemic, right? So there's ways around making it happen. Remember that when the players are good, you want to keep them because people show up for good games. And most often, I say the team, okay, whatever. But if it's one player, they can make a difference to having it a good game or not.
50 players in the draft this year that were over 25 years old, competing against 17 and 18-year-olds, only because we have no structure in terms of what is eligibility. So the eligibility rule of 5 years is a really good thing, I think. I think we should protect prep schools. If somebody wants to improve their academic circumstance, their clock shouldn't start, and they should still have 5 years after that. And I think defining who is a pro. I know a guy came from the G League, that's a pro.
They want to qualify what a pro is. Kind of like in boxing, you have the different levels of weight, fighting weight, if you will. So now they want to own what determines a pro, because remember that just like if you get certified in something, your value in the field just became higher because you've been qualified by something. So if you take and own what a pro means, I can call you pro and then not call you pro, which did what? Just reduced your value in economics like that.
Pro. There's also guys coming from Europe that are pros that are not under the same rules and regulations. I think all those things need to be controlled. So the collective, what if we continue to invest more and more in football and basketball? Let me give you the history. My first year we had collective at Alabama, 2.7 million. Next year, 7 million. Next year, 10 million. I retired. Next year, 17 million. Next year, 24 million. Now you have schools that have close to $40 million.
That's called inflation.
Rosters. So if we continue to do that, we're going to lose Olympic sports, we're going to lose non-revenue sports, we're going to lose scholarships.
So those are a lot of claims being made there, but let's head up on the Olympic ones. When you talk about Olympics specifically, Olympics is, if you look at the mindset of those that participate in Olympics and those that watch Olympics, those are very much merit-based. So getting that medal, it's not so much tied to monetary economic value. They make their money, Olympians make their money from books, from becoming coaches, from doing things that are not necessarily in a football lifespan. You can get hurt. And so as much money as you can extract from the economy based on your capabilities, you want to do it now while you're still young. Olympians are a different ballgame. Different people watch them, different merit and different economic value extraction from Olympians. Like I said, they go on to do other things. Two distinct audiences, distinct value systems of sports. So bundling it under college sports was a little stretch.
And basically what's
In my
going to
opinion.
happen is you're going to have football and basketball succeed, and we'll have club sports for everything else with no scholarships. That's horrible. I mean, we can't let that happen. And I think we have to continue to figure out ways that we can raise revenue so that we can keep all sports and all opportunities for all young people intact. I think we have to protect scholarships. We mentioned that. Injury, roster decisions.
Injury, roster decisions. Again, the roster engineering that's happened based on who has the most money to hire the best rosters. That's the key point that he's trying to make here. But adding the medical part and all of that, that's irrelevant. Irrelevant to the protecting college sports. What is it really protecting? It's protecting those that have owned the income streams of college sports. Now that the younger kids with NIL and digital gaming are gaining leverage, it changes the playground altogether.
Athletic performance should not be reasons to get rid of a player. But what we've created now with the portal, which we think is a good thing, all the coach has to say to a player that's not very good is, get in the portal. I don't want you on the team. So he gets in the portal, and maybe he doesn't get an opportunity. 30% of the people who get in the portal don't get an opportunity. So nobody talks.
But 70% do get an opportunity. So the free market is working. Who is it working for? It's working for both, because meeting of the mind says, I'm a buyer and you're a seller. The agreed upon rate that we decide on has to be agreed by both. But guess what? If the player goes out there and says, listen, I want $50 million for my first year, they're not going to get it because nobody's going to buy it unless they have some kind of a history of ROI. That's why the market takes care of itself. There's no reason to create a box around it. Organically, those that are good will get chosen for the right amount. If they go too high on their pricing as the college players, the organizations won't buy. So what are the players going to do? They're going to drop their price back down. So the market, free capitalism works this way. The value is always tested in the market. The minute you put regulations towards something, now you got minimum and you got maximum, and then you got to figure out who is it that's changing or creating chaos in the market to change. Those are all things you need to ask. So I think that's the end. Let's see.
About those things. And it minimizes, because everybody recruits out of the portal, how many young people out of high school get an opportunity to get a scholarship and play college football and start a career. So I think medical protection, injury protection, and healthcare are something that's really, really important.
Again, fluff. It's always been there.
But I also think that Congress does not need to micromanage college athletics. There's lots of people out.
So we want you, Congress, Big Daddy, we want you to put some regulations in place to help us out, keep our power and money, but we don't want you involved in the day-to-day. I still want to run it the way I want to run it as a coach, and I still want the university to be able to make their own decisions and so on and so on, right? It's selective.
There that can help us do that. Congress does need to fix the mess in the courts, create a national framework so people
Create the mess in the courts. What does that mean? What does that mean? So if somebody has a grievance, a player has a grievance, which are mostly the ones that are bringing the lawsuits. If they have a grievance, you're saying fix it as in what? Don't allow them to have a grievance? Have them, keep them down? Don't allow them. Do you see this is how change happens? All of consciousness wants to do is create homeostasis, balance of equity, but consciousness takes care of that. Not via regulations or people with higher power putting it on the little guy, if you will, in this case, the college students. I'm glad they have leverage, because if you think about those licensing agreements, I know they make them with the independent players themselves, but how much of that goes through leagues or the institutions themselves to make that, to put their name on the jerseys in a digital EA sports game or something like that. So it'd be curious to see how this turns out and what the second and third order effects of this, meaning how does it play out when Big Daddy comes into the place? How did it work out before? When regulations come into place, some work, some don't, right? So I hope that was helpful breakdown. I'll see you on the next one.